What I want to talk about is, my guess is that over the course of this morning, people have been talking about a lot of the kind of positive developments with technology, how they can make the world a better place, how they'll make it a more livable, more sustainable planet. And there's an inherent assumption in all that, which is that the people aren't going to get in the way. Culture, organisations, behaviours, beliefs, attitudes are just going to allow the sort of techno-progressive vision to take shape. The reality of our world is that's never happened yet. With all these great visions that people have painted in the past about how technology will get us there, there's always been this sense of a messy middle between the initiatives that kind of drive change and how we get to the other side where everyone's happy with it and it's all working. And with the technologies that are coming now, this truly disruptive set of technologies, I think we have an even bigger chasm to cross. There's all these visions that AI, all these technologies are going to make our world better. The problem is we don't really know how to get to the other side of this. The first wave of disruption, if you like, is the first stage of chaos is how all these technologies will impact our businesses, our world, and start to change systems, structures, and behaviours. But the second is, how do we then deal with all the adaptation issues? All of the fallout from that, whether it's beliefs, whether it's unemployment, whether it's the mental health issues we face, we're going to have a whole set of these challenges, and that's what I really want to focus on. So my guess is this morning people have talked about a lot of the big drivers for change. I'm not going to go through these, but if anyone wants, we can send you a presentation explaining these in more detail. But there's a whole set of forces that we're all pretty much aware of now that are going to shape the future. And you've now got two schools of futurists. You've got the definitivists, if you like, who say, this is exactly what's going to happen. And then you've kind of got the people who are kind of trained in scenario thinking and futures analysis who say, actually this is, analysis, who say, well actually here are some of the forces of change that are coming, and here are some of the different scenarios that could play out, and here are the issues that might arise, and how do we prepare for a range of possible futures. And that's the school of futures thinking that I sit in, rather than trying to say this is exactly what the future will look like. So these are some of the big ones. I guess one of the biggest ones right now is this clash between two civilizations almost, these two mindsets. On the one side, we have the kind of born digital world now, who see everything as data, see any challenge as something that's just a data challenge, and a case of writing the right algorithms and applying the right science and technology, whether it's feeding people, whether it's transport, whether it's getting enough doctors to us. They see it as a technology challenge and a data challenge and an access delivery challenge. Now, how do we get access to all these things to people wherever they are on the planet? So they're born digital, they think digital, they bring digital mindsets to bear. But they're clashing with a world that's been born physical, who don't see things that way. They see cars, they see houses, they see politics, and they see all the reasons why not, and the history that they have. And we've got this clash going on now, which is creating that messy middle, in a sense, that these people are saying, well, I get your picture of the world, I just don't see myself in it. Or I don't see how you're going to deal with the fallout issues that come with the kind of automation we're talking about, the scale of automation, or the shifts that are required. And we're already seeing that now. So you're seeing in India, on the one hand, the techno-progressive vision that says, no one need touch a steering wheel again within 20 years, and India saying, yeah, but just not here. There's 1.1 billion people, we like our cars, a lot of people drive here, we're expecting a lot more too. Driving here is chaotic. That mix of driverless and human-driven cars on the roads would just be a recipe for disaster. So it's not going to happen here. So we're going to see that more and more with all sorts of developments. India is kind of on the verge of a debate now about whether transhumanism is actually anti-Hindu, which is quite important of a country that's a majority Hindu population. So will we allow that with the culture? So we see a lot of these things where the born physical world is challenged by the visions of the born digital world. We also know that there are all these very exciting technologies coming, all these phenomenal science developments that are being integrated, in particular with AI, where two things are happening. One is we're moving at an exponential pace. So 3 years ago, Mark Prost in his laboratory delivered the first lab-grown hamburger, cost about 325,000 euros, and tasted horrible, apparently. Last year, same burger, 11 euros, and now tastes like Burger King beef. I'm a vegetarian, someone's going to have to tell me whether there's any taste improvement there. But 2 years' time, that exponential curve will have taken us to a 50-cent burger. That is going to be hugely disruptive to the food industry in all sorts of ways. And we're seeing this in all sorts of spaces. And I'm guessing, so I'm not going to stop saying this, but this morning I'm assuming people will have talked about that kind of stuff. So this is the exciting bit. And one of the bits that I guess is getting the techno-progressives really excited is that we're moving to a world where literally everything becomes a computing device. We've already seen sensors put on bananas, so that, we could laugh, but we go 40% of the food in the world is thrown away at the moment because it dies in the food chain. If we can track it and we know where it is, there's much less chance of it being wasted. We can get it to market, we can offer it at a lower price, and suddenly we start to cure, some of the issues around hunger. We've also seen people now doing data storage and basic computational tasks in bacteria. We've seen 1 million books stored last year on a single drop of water, on the DNA of a drop of water. We just put in a bid that was rejected for the design of a campus where the architecture in the future, where the data would be stored in the walls of a building, which would be grown over time. And it's not laughable because those are two of the projects that the genomics organisation that we bid to are working on. But they didn't have enough confidence in their own science that they would be available by the time we said they might want to use it. And we've kind of got AI, this kind of all-transcending, whatever you want to talk about now, someone's got an AI solution for it. And, it's become, to me, it's a bit like great sex. On the one hand, if you ask everyone, in principle, it seems like a good idea. On the other hand, most people haven't experienced it in their lifetime, if they're being really honest. And most people don't think they're going to see it in their lifetime. We have a challenge there. That it's still hidden to the majority of the population. Even the surveys done of MPs, they know the words, but they don't turn up to the meetings. We're in a world where the people who ought to know better don't. Just don't understand it and what its potential is. So there's a challenge there, an education challenge as well. And then we have our techno-progressive friends who are just saying, well, it's all fine, we'll all plug into the machine will serve the machine will serve us, one consciousness, we'll all be part of this wonderfully, beautifully engineered solution where every problem will have a science and technology solution, we don't have to worry. From domestic violence to climate change, we'll deal with it with science and technology. We'll neuter or we'll kind of alter the DNA of the abusive partners, and somehow we'll suck the carbon out of the atmosphere and we'll recycle it as heat and all sorts of other things. So we have these visions, and they're great, and when we're asked to talk about that stuff, we do. But today what I really want to focus on is this, which is there's a lot of hope about how we get there. So we have these shiny technologies and great ideas, but then we load them up with all sorts of other stuff that they have to deal with, which is all the human behaviour stuff. And most organisations, most people, most cultures are not ready for the world we're moving into, whether it's an understanding problem, a behaviour problem, or a desire problem. And I want to focus on 4 bits, really. Firstly, developing the capacity and capability of society to do something with this in a very complex world. Secondly, this whole issue of jobs and money. The next is about, what are the societal platforms that are going to be critical? How does society itself nudge itself through this? And my biggest concern right now is the issue of mental health problems. So officially, the numbers of people with mental health issues are going up, at clinical level. But the massive explosion is people with subclinical mental health issues, stress and things that isn't quite making it to a doctor's surgery. And that's a big challenge, I think, that we're really going to have to deal with. So, and my view is that the only way we take this stuff forward is by making sure that the science and technology actually serves to create a better human future. That one where people can genuinely see that we're doing this stuff in service of humanity, not that humanity has to become a servant of the technology. And that's my biggest fear, that most of the conversation now coming out of the techno-progressives is veering towards we will have to do what the technology says we can do because it's a good idea, rather than we have any choice or agency in this. And then there's and one of the biggest issues right now is that organisations are in kind of free fall and frozen about the scale of change coming at them. They're being asked a whole set of fundamental questions. Even the people with natural monopolies or virtual monopolies like the banks are being challenged to say, why do you still exist? What have you done for me lately? And why is it you assume that you have a natural existence in this world? It will get eroded in different ways. How do you prove that your consumption of resources is worth the value you deliver back to society? And then we've kind of got these debates. I'm sort of refusing now to get involved in any more of these debates about will AI take our jobs? You know, because pretty much all the studies, there's only two answers that you can hope for from the studies. One is that they predict something at the beginning, in which case you don't need to read the rest of the report because it will be wrong. Or they say we don't know. Right? There's a bunch of scenarios and we really don't know. Those are the interesting ones because they show how it can play out. Anyone who's saying right now, what is the impact of AI going to be on the legal profession in 10 years' time, is clearly smoking something if they try and put a number to that. Because we don't know how the legal profession is going to evolve, half of the global economy in 10 years' time, it doesn't even exist today in terms of the businesses and the industries. So how do we know what the legal requirements are going to be around industries that are creating synthetic life forms? It's impossible to predict. So there's a kind of nonsensical discussion going on in pretty much every industry about how many jobs will go. But people are hanging their hat on forecasts, and on the one hand you've got people saying 50% more jobs, on the other hand up to 80% less. But it's kind of madness to worry about the outcome and wait for the answer, because by the time we have the answer, we will either have a massive skill shortage or a massive problem in terms of people with no jobs and no money. So we need to start thinking about it. And we also need to think about, I think the biggest challenge for organisations is the mindset blockage. But right now, there's an awful lot of people who just don't understand the new world. So if you look at United and British Airways, two recent problems with airlines, these are organisations that did not understand people. Take BA, systems failure, if you believe it, that someone was able to switch off the main system and the backup system with a single flick of a switch. Even Windows 8 gives you an "Are you sure?" option. So, but then, if you look at BA's entire sort of response, it's not been about the 75,000 passengers who were stranded around the world, or the staff who were telling customers to F off because they were going home now and fed up of hearing from them. All they've talked about is the systems and how they're going to investigate the systems problem. They've got a parallel systems investigation problem, and then the third independent group are going to look at the two parallel systems investigations to work out what went wrong. You and I are going, well, actually, we know what went wrong. You don't think about people. You don't think about your customers. You don't think about empowering your staff to service your people. It doesn't matter how much technology you throw at this. They're always going to be upset if you do this to them. United sent on three, any one of us would have said, you're about to send 3 big security guards onto a plane full of people armed with smartphones and social media accounts, and you're going to drag a 69-year-old man off the plane. This is not a good PR move. Particularly as it's going to cost you $4,000 to compensate those people and put them in a hotel, whereas it would cost you $1,000 maximum to put those 4 members of the airline, which is a partner airline, put them in a limo, drive them from Chicago to St. Louis, feed them twice on the way, whatever. Buy them a comedian to entertain them en route. It's not going to cost you as much as what you're about to do. But no one in the airline felt empowered enough or courageous enough to do the right thing for the passenger. Now that's not because you've hired wimp staff, it's because you've created a machine that doesn't let them breathe. And that's my concern about our approaches to technology right now, is that there's a real risk that we crush the life out of people and customers and they'll just walk away from us, and that we commoditize our organizations. One of the biggest challenges around all this is technology literacy. I am appalled at the level of understanding of the technologies that are out there today, let alone the ones that are coming, at the senior level of organisations where they're signing off billion-pound contracts for their digital transformation, and they have no clue what they're signing up to. In most cases, they're signing their own death warrant because they're basically commoditising themselves to look almost entirely like their competitors, because they bought the strategy from a consultancy that's done 2 others, for their competitors, and they're not going to give you something unique. It's just what they're saying. So we're going to commoditize a lot of these businesses. They're going to be in a race to the bottom, whereas the bit that differentiates us is the ability to use the technology to liberate our staff to do really clever thinking on behalf of the customer, to do the really innovative stuff to solve the problems that technology can't yet solve, to do the creation of new value, and to, in a sense, articulate a new vision for the organisation. So that's where I think the value comes. At the moment, we're saying the way we deal with the problem of getting our staff and leaders to understand this stuff is we throw more and more information at them, and we create more and more initiatives. Some organisations, I think, are doing really clever stuff where they're putting their top leadership through programs like Coursera programs to understand the technology shaping the modern world of it. They go into the likes of Singularity University to really understand how these technologies will shape industry, will shape our lives, or could do, and getting them having the conversations about, okay, how do we really use this for our organisation? And I think we need to do this all the way down so people understand what's coming, how we can use it, and where the issues might be. We're also in a world where we just don't get that we have a very limited notion today of what we use to exchange value. It's called money. But we're moving into a world now where people are already giving their blood in return for getting credits for healthcare, in the future maybe credits for education. You know, so blood's becoming a commodity. Our social media, network, the size of our network, we're getting paid now in all sorts of alternatives to money. Our air miles, all sorts of things are going to become commodities in a world where people may not have the same income or jobs. So we have to start thinking about a world where we have multiple asset sources. And we also know that when we start to think about multiple asset sources, organisations that have 1 billion plus customers who they talk to on a daily basis might have more say about how the banking system works than Barclays or Lloyds or American Express. So the systems are being challenged. So what are some of the things we need to do in this space? Well, I don't think we should be waiting to say, well, let's see what happens and then decide if we need a universal basic income. We need to be doing what the likes of Finland, Namibia, Canada and others have done, Germany. So let's do the experiments now around how you run different types of universal basic income and universal basic service projects to see what it costs to deliver, what does it do to things like domestic violence, to people's attitudes in society, to their willingness to work, their productivity. What does it actually look like under these experiments? So if we do get to the point where a significant number of jobs go, we're ready with some possible solutions rather than starting the conversation there. Secondly, it's almost inevitable that big businesses won't employ as many people. Startups will be key here. So what do? Do we wait? Or do we start to really encourage people now to start businesses, to provide support in terms of helping them get non-executive directors and advisors, helping them think about how you structure your business platforms that help you do all the boring bits like the admin, the invoicing, the accounting. The next, I think, is we don't know what the sectors are that are going to win, but we have a fair view. For a country like the size of the UK, it's reasonable to kind of list 20 or 30 sectors that we could be putting significant R&D effort into. And as our model, we should be looking back to the 18th century and the 19th century where Britain pioneered a bunch of things and then sold them to the world. And I think we need to start thinking again about what do we pioneer. So, for me, there is a no-brainer here that the word one on the Brexit strategy should be we want to have the fastest broadband in the world so companies everywhere want to come and do business here. It just makes a lot of sense that we have a vision of where we're going rather than what we're trying to get away from. Then there's kind of education, and there's two parts to that. One is the 0 to 18 education, and there's the continuing adult education. We don't know the jobs people will be doing in 5 years' time, let alone 20 or 50 years. So what we have to do is to equip them with the skills that allow them to keep learning new jobs, to move quickly from job, to create their own jobs, to adapt in the world we're moving into. And these are different types of skills, but we really need to think about both the ratio of teachers to pupils, so we're helping much more with facilitating the learning process than the delivery content. And secondly, kind of changing people's attitudes and self-belief, which is huge in terms of their ability to find new jobs and learn new skills. And then the final one for me is this issue of mental health. Right now, any organisation you go into, you see a lot of people that are phenomenally stressed already in the way they're operating. And the idea of, for a lawyer that you're going to be replaced by Robbie the robot or Ross or whatever does not reduce your stress levels. You invest a lot of mental energy in trying to fight it off, which is what's happening in most law firms. And secondly, you're really very scared that there's no role for you when you come out the other end. So we know the inevitable, probable almost certain future in this is many more problems for people in the workplace and out of it. So we can be doing things right now in terms of helping people with stress in work, but also training a lot more therapists so that in 3 to 5 years' time, when this starts to hit, there's a lot of support for them in society. And the final is, across all of these things, not just the commercial stuff, but mental health, societal infrastructure, we should be doing a lot more accelerated innovation projects and innovation competitions where we're doing the kind of X prize thing to come up with radical ideas. At the moment, we're almost totally reliant on the UAE for this. Their Future Foundation has these projects where it's asking people to think ahead 10 years and then build a prototype now. So saying, what could our world look like, and then let's try and prototype it today. Because most of the things they're talking about are social challenges. We don't really want to build our entire model on you know, what Dubai is doing. You know, they're doing some great stuff, but we're kind of quite a big country. We ought to have some really imaginative projects in here. So my time's up. I hope that's made sense. I know it's very different to the presentations I normally give to this group, but you know, we're now looking at the second and third order effects about how you get to tomorrow, and a tomorrow where actually, you know, we have a sustainable future for the whole of humanity, not just those with the money. So I hope that makes sense. I hope it's kind of given you some food for thought and help with your digestion after lunch. Thank you.
So who's going to be paying for all these therapists to be trained? You're saying
well,
it's a no-brainer that we should be paying people to get ready.
So we've bought into the myth that lower taxes are always the best thing for the whole of society. In the UK today, what do you think is the percentage of adults that pay tax?
Well, we all pay tax by
14%.
Income tax.
14% pay
tax?
income tax.
Yes.
Right. So it's actually a very small percentage of the population. And we've kind of demonstrated now with the failures we're seeing in public services across the board that you can only cut so far. Now we have to have a conversation in society that says, okay, if, you know, do we want to live with a massive mental health problem? Okay, then we won't fund it. Do we want to live with no investment in R&D? Do we, you know, or do we say, well, actually, do we start to earmark certain percentages where we literally say another penny on the pound, but that is going to fund this specific thing around mental health or this specific thing around preparing people for the future? Because the investment now of slightly more tax, and we have one of the lowest individual and corporate tax rates in Europe, and we're at the bottom of the OECD competitiveness tables, we're at the bottom of the education tables. You know, we're not doing brilliantly as a result of having a low tax economy. And we have to start to say, is there a threshold where actually you've cut enough and now we need to reinvest again? And I'm very willing to have the argument with anyone who says, no, we just have to keep cutting taxes, that says, well, let's play it out. You know, we don't have the capacity to fund these things without tax at the moment. We might be able to come up with things. We could take AI into public ownership, which I'm sure will be popular, and you know, fund it out of certain industries. But I don't think we'll do that. So I think the tax system has to be the mechanism we use. And I don't think many people would suffer, particularly if we raise taxes for those who are paying more. People objected to Corbyn at the top level, but he doesn't care about them. You know, they were the people who he wanted to tax to fund services for the rest of society. So we are in an interesting debate here. If we don't do these things, the question is, well, what will it look like? If we don't fund our future, then what kind of scenarios play out?
So we're going to hear a presentation shortly, later today, about proposal for changes in the tax system. So we may pick up some of these questions there as well. So how do you repurpose and reskill people without causing lots more stress?
Well, right now, people can see this. People aren't stupid. They can see change happening in society. What they don't have is the support necessarily to guide them through next steps that say, okay, you're losing your job as a tool fitter. You know, here are some of the jobs that are coming up. Here are some skill services that will equip you with new skills. Or, you know, starting the conversations with professionals to say, get over your own ego and start to understand that there are going to be a lot less of you in the future, whatever scenario we look at. How do you want to prepare for that? Do you want to complain when you lose your job, or do you want to start thinking about how you can use your skills and your capacities, your problem-solving skills, your scenario thinking skills, your advisory skills, to learn a new role, a new profession? So, I mean, we are also, I think we're going to see a lot more small businesses starting up in these new sectors. As I said, 50% of the businesses in the future economy don't even exist today, 10 years out. Most of those firms are going to need a finance director. They might not need a law firm, but they're going to need professionals to advise them. So there will be growth, but it will be a different type of advisory role than the sort of heavy transactional role that most professionals do today. So it's a conversation that we have to keep having.
You made some criticisms at the beginning about forecasts that come up with specific numbers and saying in the future such and such a number of people might be unemployed, for example. But isn't there a role for forecast to give a spread of possibilities and say, look, there are these scenarios and we don't know which of the scenarios may occur, but there's various probabilities by which they might occur, and therefore you need to take these into account.
Oh, I'm fine with people doing forecasts if no one's going to look at them. But if you want to make policy decisions on them, most of the forecasts, most of the assumptions that we see are nonsense. They're not taking account of the industries that are coming through. They're not talking about the nature, the way industries might change, the way jobs might change. So they're basing them on today.
The objection isn't to the forecasting itself. You just think they're bad forecasts because they're not taking enough factors into
I
account.
think it's almost impossible to predict the impact of AI on jobs today because we have no clue about how deep it will go, the cultural choices people will make about how much they automate, whether nations will, vote for or against this stuff. So you really are going for a kind of massive cascade of assumptions that don't hold water once you start to break them apart.
So, because we can't have any confidence, we shouldn't even bother trying to think about the future. We should just be ready for anything that comes. No probabilities are more likely than others.
Yeah,
really
absolutely. No, can I just finish and then you can... So no, obviously not. We have to prepare for a plausible range of scenarios. We know quite a lot about certain things. So things like population, rate of economic growth for the next few years, there are things that we can be reasonably certain on, and there are things that we're much more uncertain of. But I would prefer to base future strategy and preparation for the future on some robust scenarios that cover 3 or 4 very different possibilities than these forecasts that are increasingly spurious. And when you look at them, increasingly they're using the data from someone else's forecast and they're feeding it back in and adding a few more assumptions. They're not actually giving us useful information on which to base future strategy.
Bill, I read an interview with Jeff Bezos, and he said he's very often asked, Jeff, what's it going to be like in 10 years' time? You're the man. Tell us. And he says, to be honest, I don't really worry what it's going to be like in 10 years' time. I think about the people that we serve, and I think, what can I do which I believe will always be something that they will like? Are people ever going to ask me for higher prices? Maybe not. Are people ever going to ask me for slower deliveries? Maybe not. So actually what he's doing is a very sort of really obvious strategy, but the acceleration sort of fear that we have blinds us to, which is looking at things which probably won't change very much and trying to serve them better, and thus being the person, it turns out, who has created in many ways aspects of the future that people are terrified of by concentrating on deep reality, which I think is quite an intelligent...
So that's Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon.
I think there's a competing set of views right now. So if you look at the companies that are effectively building the AI tools and amassing the data to help them work out how to run any industry, then they're pretty happy. Facebook, Google, Amazon, because they feel like they're going to be the new masters of the universe, and they're kind of becoming it. But you look at the industries who they're going to disrupt, and they're not having the same kind of confident conversation.
Sure.
They're sitting there, I know we've done, I think, 6 in the last 3 months, sessions where the brief has been, how do we make sure we're still here in 5 years' time and we're a Fortune 100 company, not Fortune 500? This is a very real kind of recognition now that the business may not exist because the kind of assumptions they had are being challenged from all sides. And so the tech, the firms that are at the heart of the revolution feel pretty comfortable that they're funding, an awful lot of research and development to create continuous waves of change. The others are not so sure that they're going to be able to keep up.
Okay, so there's one last question which has got a lot of votes. It's about a question about the future, so you might say that we don't know, but is talking about countries still the right thing for the future? Should we not aim to decentralise our borders and national identities?
It's really interesting that depending on where you are in the world, there's a very different view on this. So there's a lot of countries now that are effectively moving towards eliminating a lot of what we would call national boundaries. So if you look across the Middle East, they're pioneering blockchain-based passports, so that you have a kind of collection of pretty much all the countries in the Middle East except Qatar and Iraq, because they're not popular at the moment. But so we could start to see models like the EU, where the countries underneath have a lot less going on, and there's a lot more of these services provided by supranational organisations, but you might still have country identities for other reasons. If you wanted me to put a guess on it, my view is that you would probably have uniquely identifiable countries, maybe somewhere between 80 and 100 in 50 years' time, that will have less, will have more of these blocks. Other countries will emerge. There's a lot of countries in Africa where they just don't have the manpower to do everything like economics ministry, roads, transport, all that kind of stuff. So actually uniting them because of a relatively small population and having more central planning might make sense. That doesn't deal with the cultural and political issues, but I think sheer economics might drive countries to merge at the administrative level, even if they keep a national brand just from a geographic perspective.
Rohit Talwar, CEO of Fast Future, thank you very much.
Thank you.